Hey everyone, how's it going? So before I did solo runs and the other crazy challenges you've seen on this channel, these are the types of challenges I used to do all the time as a kid. This is a completely unmodified, normal version of Pokemon Crystal, and my goal is simple. Can I beat the game with only bug Pokemon, but my Pokemon cannot exceed level 50? With how difficult the Elite Four and Red are, this might seem like an impossible task, but of course, because it's me, there are going to be some additional rules. For one, as normal, we're going to be playing with set mode, so no free swaps, and we're not going to use items in battle, which is always the way I play. But to make things even more interesting, because in Pokemon Crystal, there are 12 evolutionary lines for bug Pokemon, in this video, I'm just going to be using the bugs that were catchable in Red and Blue, or the Kanto bugs. I might try this again with the Johto bug, so if you want to see that, please let me know. But with all that out of the way, it's time to start our journey. I pick Chikorita as my starter, and then I go after I get the Pokeballs and catch both a Caterpie and a Weedle. With that, we have what are ostensibly our starting Pokemon, and our difficult journey begins. And speaking of things that are very difficult, today's sponsor is a game that you may well remember as one of the most difficult games from your childhood, The Oregon Trail. It was remastered and released in November of 2022, and while it has been available for the PC, Xbox, and Nintendo Switch, now finally it will be available for the Sony PlayStation. I'll admit I hadn't played the original version, but had a lot of fun playing this new remastered version on my PC. In this game, you're trying to get 4 travelers across the treacherous Oregon Trail. On this trail, you'll encounter all sorts of obstacles and will have to manage resources while trying to keep your party both happy and well fed. This game has choices everywhere, and the choices affect not only what will happen later in the game, but also whether your team will make it. Choose well and your party will be rewarded. Choose poorly and you may lose a character, 2, or in my case, all of them. Now, if you're interested in the Oregon Trail, the release on PlayStation will be a cross-gen bundle for both PS4 and PS5. And good news, if you're a PlayStation Plus subscriber, you'll get a 33% discount on the game until February 25th. Another piece of good news is that the Cowboys and Critters DLC is available launch day on PS5 for only $5, and will bring with it new characters, locations, achievements, new mechanics, and even a completely new class, the Cook. The Oregon Trail launches this February 9th on PlayStation, and I hope you guys check it out. If you're interested, click the link either in the description box or post it in the comments below. And I hope you guys also have a great time navigating the Oregon Trail. For now, though, it's time for us to navigate this bug challenge. So you're probably wondering, how the heck are you going to beat Falkner with just bugs? Well, remember, this isn't a Nuzlocke. In fact, when I started doing these challenges, I didn't even know what a Nuzlocke was. And certainly the hardcore Nuzlocke variant with strict level caps didn't exist back then. The only level cap we have is the final one of level 50. We can get as high a level as we need to get in order to beat the initial gyms, and it's actually not as bad versus Falkner as you might think. The reason I mention hardcore Nuzlocke level caps is because at level 9, which would be our level cap, we wouldn't be able to evolve into Butterfree or Beedrill. And with Butterfree, we can use a strategy that's very interesting, or at least I think it is. So Butterfree has Confusion, that's great, but it also has Harden. And since it's flying type, Pidgey can't use Mud Slap. And after we use all the Hardens and we have a berry to restore 10 HP, we can end up knocking out the Pidgey and having so much defense that Pidgeotto can't knock us out in 1 or 2 or 3 hits. And we almost are able to knock it out with Butterfree alone. Thankfully, Beedrill is able to outspeed and revenge KO with Poison Sting. And so it is a first try victory versus Falkner. It would have been really cool if we could have stuck to the hardcore level caps, but unfortunately, especially with just Kanto only bugs, we weren't going to win this fight with Metapod or Kakuna, at least not without insane luck. I don't actually think it would be possible. But we were able to do it at just level 10, thanks to the evolved forms of each, Butterfree and Beedrill. And speaking of how bad Kakuna and Metapod are, we're probably not going to have too difficult a time versus the next gym leader, Bugsy. But before I did that, in fact, even before I did the Slowpoke Well section, I went to catch 2 more Pokemon who are going to be joining our team. Paris and Venonat, both of whom could be caught in Ilex Forest. I'm not really sure how helpful they're going to be versus Bugsy, but 4 Pokemon are typically better than 2. Alrighty, so Bugsy leads with Metapod, and we're going to lead with Beedrill. You'll notice we have Swift. Beedrill doesn't really get a good move to level 20, so Swift base 60 power is pretty good. Now I'm going to use the exact same strategy as before, except instead of it being Pidgey with Mud Slap, I need to worry about Kakuna with Poison Sting, and instead of Butterfree, we're going to pick Beedrill, which is immune to poison. So the goal is to set up all the hardens possible in order to make Scyther easier. I tried to poison it with Poison Sting, but unfortunately it wasn't working, and I realized I should have just been using Swift. Unfortunately, Scyther gets a critical hit, and that's probably going to result in a loss. I kind of messed up there.
Oops.
That's a perfect example of galaxy braining, or just in normal people's terms, overthinking. Had I just tried to use Swift, which dealt way more damage, I probably would have won. But because this was live on Twitch and my chat was giving me a hard time, I decided to do the same thing again, and as it turned out, it actually wasn't the worst strategy, because we do poison the Scyther, and it gets a critical hit, which, by the way, that's crazy good luck. But since it got a critical hit so early, it's still going to knock out my entire team. Unless it misses, and now Venonat at level 10 uses Supersonic, Scyther hits itself in confusion, and then Tackle from level 10 Venonat ends up knocking out Scyther. So, as I said, 4 Pokemon is indeed better than just 2. Also, I do want to point out, Swift wasn't doing all that much damage, so in the end, Poison Sting really was the strat. I just needed to get better luck with not getting a 1 in, what, 12? 18 is it for critical hits? I mean, just crazy luck that we got 2 critical hits early on in the battle, and it sucks that Butterfree is so weak that even though it resists, not double resists, but single resists, it still's knocked out in 1 hit. Annoying. But win's a win. Venonat, surprising hero of the battle. There's a lot of game to get to, so I'm going to skip over the rival fights unless there's something super interesting in one of them. And we're going to make our way to Goldenrod. And in fact, in the national park in Goldenrod, we're going to catch our final 2 Pokemon, who you might expect, and you'd expect correctly, will be the linchpins of this team. And those 2 Pokemon are, of course, Scyther and Pinsir. Now, they can only be caught during the bug catching contest, which is on Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday. And I'm not sure if you know this, but you can change the clock easily in any Generation 2 game. Not so much in Generation 3, by the way. That's the generation where changing the clock is really annoying. But regardless, we have a full team of 6 Pokemon, and we're ready to take on a gym leader with a super effective move that is double super effective against 2 of my team members. This is probably going to go really badly. Let's see. Whitney leads with Clefairy, and I'm going to lead with Scyther. The reason? My hope is that Scyther can outspeed Miltank, and if I build up enough Fury Cutters, which I've taught to Scyther, maybe I can one-shot. But, of course, Miltank outspeeds me. Now my goal is to try and dig with Paris, but of course Miltank is going to one-shot. So, leading with Scyther may not be the right decision. So let's instead lead with Pinsir, which is not double weak to roll up, but only single weak. It's also level 16. There's only so many trainers I could battle. One lucky thing, as you'll notice, is there's just so many good TMs, such as Headbutt for Pinsir, Fury Cutter for Scyther, and Dig for Paris. So I'm going to try to use Headbutt, but unfortunately, it really doesn't work, and Miltank knocks me out. But it only has 2 more left. Venonat's not going to be the hero. In fact, it's level 17, which is kind of crazy. And then Beedrill gets knocked out. Now we go into Paris, but unfortunately, Paris is male because it has better attack, and Miltank is able to attract it. I can't attack for a couple turns, and it knocks it out. The goal is to use Stun Spore and try to stop it from setting up with Rollout and maybe getting Scyther to knock it out. So I'm going to do the same thing I did in the first battle, mostly because I forgot to swap Scyther for Pinsir. That's kind of unfortunate, but Miltank misses, and thus Scyther is able to knock out half its health, which is pretty good. Then Pinsir is able to hit with 1 Headbutt. It takes 2 more for it to knock out Pinsir, one more for it to knock out Beedrill, and the last one knocks out the Venonat. Now we have Paris. It goes for Attract, but this time I hit with Stun Spore. Of course, I don't actually hit. It misses. Great. But then on the second turn, I fight through the Attraction, use Stun Spore, and now I can swap into Butterfree. It goes for Stomp. Of course, ideally I try and put it to sleep, but I go for the Hail Mary Confusion. It confuses, which is very unlikely, and then hits itself in Confusion, which is super unlikely. I hit with Confusion again, and it hits itself in Confusion again. I hit with Confusion again, and then it goes for Rollout, and it's all up to Paris. If it hits, I lose, but I actually outspeed, which I wasn't expecting. Rollout misses, and Dig knocks it out. A full team effort with Paris, of all things, coming up huge with the Stun Spore, the Dig. Very good stuff here, and I've mentioned this in a couple videos, but nothing makes me feel better, even though I'm known as a solo run guy, when I have a full team and every Pokemon does their part, even if their part was just tanking a rollout. But it was pretty cool. Whitney was defeated in only 3 tries, so thus far we've done 3 gyms, and the most amount of tries we've needed for any of them is 3. Don't know if that will continue. One gym leader in particular I'm pretty worried about, but the other cool thing is with bug Pokemon, other than for Falkner to get the evolutions, I haven't exceeded the hardcore Nuzlocke level caps for any of the gym leaders subsequently, which is pretty cool. There are no new Pokemon to catch, but ton of trainers to battle before Morty, so Butterfree's already at level 21. Unfortunately, it does not outspeed Ghastly, gets hit by Curse, but it does knock it out. I'm gonna therefore swap into Venonat. It goes for Nightshade. Venonat does have Confusion, but Venonat's not a great special attacker. Venomoth is, but Venonat does its job and knocks out Haunter. Gengar comes out and uses Shadow Ball, which is fine. Now I'm going to try and put Gengar to sleep, and I do outspeed it. And if you're wondering, how do I outspeed one and not the other? Quick Claw. Unfortunately, the Gengar does put me to sleep because with Quick Claw, I can't use a Mint Berry, only one item. So Gengar goes for Dream Eater, but I swap into Beedrill. Beedrill, really, I didn't have a great move for it, and I get hit by Dream Eater, and it's going to restore the little amount of damage I've done. Next comes out Paris, and it misses with Hypnosis, which is huge, because as we did with Whitney, we're going to paralyze it with Stun Spore. We hit with Dig, but it's only doing about a third, and thankfully it goes for Mean Look, which is the best thing it could have done. We hit with Dig again, and Hypnosis misses, so we're getting some pretty crazy luck, and we knock out Gengar. That means that the final Pokemon is Haunter. It's not nearly as scary, and once again, Paris, of all things, probably the Pokemon I anticipated being the most useless other than maybe Beedrill, has been the key critical component. Well, key and critical are the same word, but you get what I'm saying. I'm just excited here. It has been the reason we have won the last 2 battles. So you never know which Pokemon is going to be useful. That's why you do the runs, right? Next gym leader is Chuck, the fighting type gym leader, which in theory should be a really good matchup for my bug team, but let's see. Chuck leads with his Primeape, I lead with Butterfree. Primeape does outspeed, and remember, Butterfree just has Confusion, not Psybeam or anything, but it's still a 3-hit KO. I don't think that crit matters. Poliwrath knocks out Butterfree, and I send out Scyther, and I get just really absurd luck, where I just get flinch after flinch after flinch. Truth is, we would have won with our other Pokemon, so I'm not going to reset or do anything silly like that. We had a very good team for Chuck, but that was probably the luckiest way I could have beaten him. Who we may actually need luck against is Jasmine, the Steel-type gym leader. We have an awful matchup against her, which is precisely why I'm going to battle Price instead first. I mean, that's hardly surprising. Pinsir 2-shot Seal with Headbutt, and then against Dugong, it's going to be a 4-shot. We get a flinch, but it goes for Rest, which is expected. I go for Focus Energy. If we get a crit, we don't have to worry about Rest or anything like that. But in the end, what ends up happening is a flinch. So that made sense. Against Piloswine, I go for Seismic Toss, but that did next to nothing. And Blizzard knocks out Pinsir and then knocks out Scyther after it hits with Headbutt. I have Venonat. I go for Disable, but it didn't go for Blizzard. It went for Fury Attack. So, oops. Next, I have Beedrill. I go for Twin Needle, and then it goes for Icy Wind. Another Twin Needle poisons it, and shockingly, after Blizzard misses, The poison from Twin Needle actually knocks out the Piloswine. I didn't think it would, which is why I didn't really celebrate or anything, but now I will. Hooray! We've beaten Price, but although we've beaten Price and done the Rocket Hideout and battled all the trainers we can, I still think we're very underleveled and going to have an extremely hard time versus Jasmine, but there's really nothing else we can even do at this point, so we have to go battle her. Jasmine leads with her Magnemite, and I lead with Pinsir. Now, unlike in my legendary Beast run, I am open to using Hidden Power here, and it just so happened Pinsir's Hidden Power was about base 60 Hidden Power Ground, which is super useful versus Jasmine, or at least super useful versus Jasmine's Magnemite. Against Steelix, it does next to nothing because Steelix has excellent defenses. So that's one down for me. I send in Butterfree because my goal is to hit it with Supersonic and then put it to sleep, and then we can swap in something else like Parasect. And although Parasect doesn't have something super useful like a Leech Seed, we can try to hit it with Dig as much as possible. I did want to hit itself in Confusion, but it's not doing that. Still, Dig is doing decent damage. Unfortunately, Iron Tail nearly knocks me out in one hit, and although it has very bad accuracy, the second hit does knock me out. So I'm going to be greedy again and go for Supersonic, not try and put it to sleep. Steelix does hit itself in Confusion once, but the second time it hits with Rock Throw and bye-bye Butterfree. Next I send out Scyther. Scyther doesn't really have any good move. I go for Headbutt and Rock Throw knocks me out. Now we have Beedrill. Beedrill has basically nothing, and it knocks it out. And so all we have left is Venonat, and Supersonic misses, and that's a loss. Of course, I forgot to save, so when I reset, I have to battle Price again, which is very annoying. We don't have to see that another time. We can skip to our second Jasmine battle. The start of the battle is pretty easy. We outspeed Magnemite, and we're always going to one-shot it with Hidden Power Ground. It's what we do next that's difficult. Steelix, I go for Seismic Toss because it's doing more. It's actually going to be a 4-hit KO, and Iron Tail misses twice. Jasmine does have a Hyper Potion, so if it misses again... Oh, wow. Okay. I think that was luckier than Chuck, and we did talk about needing luck. We got some pretty incredible luck. It hit us with 1 Iron Tail, I believe, out of 5. The odds of that are probably really low, but I'll take it. The alternative is just simply battling some wild Pokemon. That would change a few things that would make the Jasmine fight a lot easier, but I'll definitely take some fluky misses. And that's 7 gym badges down. Just one more to go, Claire. Now, Claire is a Dragon-type gym leader. I would say it's kind of a neutral matchup, not particularly good, not particularly bad, but it is going to be very hard. With 6 Pokemon, you just simply don't gain enough levels without having to battle a bunch of wild Pokemon, which, as you know, I prefer not to do. So we're probably going to be very underleveled, despite the fact we have to battle Team Rocket like a gajillion times. Let's see how the Claire battle goes. Claire leads with her Dragonair, she has 3 of them, and I lead with Scyther, which is only level 32. Now, my original plan is to use Fury Cutter, try to gain up enough power, and knock out all her Pokemon. There is a bit of an issue with that plan, which is that Dragonair likes to use Thunder Wave, and after Thunder Wave I'm slow, I don't attack sometimes, and if Fury Cutter is interrupted, it stops getting powered up. So I may need to use a Paralysis Cure Berry, or hope for a Thunder Wave miss, which in this generation, if the AI uses it, is a 1 in 4 chance. I decide to go ahead with a battle where I don't get the miss, and I'm able to knock it out with 2 wing attacks and a quick attack. The next Dragonair knows Thunderbolt, which is really annoying because I can't learn Thunderbolt this early, and it knocks out Scyther. You can see all my Pokemon are either level 31 or Pinsir, which is level 32. Venomoth has evolved, and it still only knows Confusion, but it has much better special attack, and it tanks an attack and knocks out the Dragonair. Dragonair number 3 comes out. I try to go for Supersonic. It paralyzes me, and then I don't hit it again and lose Venomoth. Beedrill comes out, and I go for Twin Needle. It paralyzes it, goes for Slam, and gets a crit. Beautiful. I go for Pinsir, my best Pokemon. It goes for Ice Beam, and thankfully, only 2 headbutts are needed to knock out Dragonair, and now out comes Kingdra. Kingdra, I have no idea what it's going to do. It goes for Surf and knocks me out, and so I'm going to go for Parasect. I do have Spore. It goes for Smokescreen. I use Spore and it hits, so I swap into Butterfree here. Remember, we do have Supersonic, and although I missed the first time, the second time I hit, I also have Quick Claw, so that I sometimes will outspeed Kingdra and other various threatening Pokemon. And now it's just going to be a battle of attrition. Unfortunately, Kingdra doesn't need attrition. It has Hyper Beam, and it knocks me out. I can thus put it back to sleep while it's recharging, but the best move Parasect has is Dig, which doesn't do very much. It is confused for one more turn and hits itself in confusion, so after Dig, it has less than half HP, and Parasect is fairly bulky. It can tank a Hyper Beam on its own, and I do put it to sleep. Unfortunately, Claire has a Hyper Potion, and once I saw that, I'm like, okay, well, this is a loss. So I have to figure out a bit of a better strategy. And I decide, what if I change up the order of my Pokemon? What if I lead with Pinsir? I know it seems like it wouldn't make a huge difference, but maybe it would. Pinsir then can use Headbutt. Thunder Wave finally misses. That's so funny. And I'm hoping for a flinch here. I don't get it. I do get hit by Thunder Wave, and worse yet, I get immobilized not once, but twice. And so at 4 HP, I knock out Dragonair number 1. That means Dragonair number 2 is going to obliterate me. But I do gain really useful information that it's the Thunderbolt Dragonair. Thankfully, there's no Flamethrower Dragonair. Theoretically, you could have one. Beedrill didn't really do much in the last battle, but in this battle, I can use it against Dragonair number 2, and you can see me pausing as I'm trying to figure out what to do next. In the end, I just decide to try and knock it out with Beedrill. I end up getting a Twin Needle Poison, and even after a critical hit, the poison knocks it out. So as we get to Dragonair number 3, we've only lost 2 Pokemon, meaning we have 2 Pokemon for each of Claire's last 2 Pokemon. I'm going to go for Supersonic and try to be kind of cheeky here. I wish I had Psychic or Psybeam, and I get really lucky with both Supersonic hitting and it hitting itself in confusion twice. But wait, it gets better. My confusion actually confuses Dragonair, which isn't all that likely, and it hits itself in confusion a 3rd time. This means Venomoth gets to face Kingdra, and Kingdra goes for Hyper Beam, so now I have a free turn of setup versus Kingdra, which is massive. And I'm just going to go for Spore on the recharge turn, and then I'm going to swap into Scyther and try to go for Fury Cutter. It starts as base 10 power, then base 20, it goes for Smokescreen, base 40, unfortunately the base 80 misses, and we do get it down to half HP, but it's not going to be enough, especially with the Hyper Potion I know is coming. Hyper Beam then crits Parasect, and at this point, I decide just to reset and try again. We have a strategy that is going to work, and if Scyther didn't miss that base 80 Fury Cutter, we probably would have won just there and then. So I don't really have to talk much more about the battle up to Kingdra. It all just kind of depends on what happens at Kingdra. In this battle, by the time we get to Kingdra, Venomoth had been used earlier and it's Beedrill that faces it, but it doesn't go for Hyper Beam and instead goes for Dragon Breath and knocks out the Beedrill. So I once again have 3 Pokemon, including Parasect. It goes for Smokescreen, and we're going to set up the exact same situation. Fury Cutter 1, Fury Cutter 2, it wakes up, goes for Smokescreen. The 3rd one hits, it goes for Surf, and this time it crits. So I didn't even have a chance to miss. I can put it to sleep. This time Hyper Beam doesn't crit, but we're in the same scenario as we were in our first battle versus Claire. We have Butterfree trying to rely on confusion strats. I mean, literally using confusion. But I more meant trying to get Kingdra to knock itself out by hitting itself in confusion. We actually get really lucky. Hyper Beam, as it turns out, is not a guaranteed one-shot versus Butterfree, and it survives on literally 1 HP. Because of that, Butterfree can chip away a little bit more, and Claire wastes one of her full heals on Kingdra. Unfortunately, I can't put it back to sleep, but just as I think Butterfree's going to get knocked out, the Kingdra, after hitting itself in confusion, gets outsped due to Quick Claw. So the luck is real here. Kingdra stays asleep, but then it goes for Hyper Beam. I'm glad it doesn't think to go for Surf there, because it's going to give Parasect a chance to put it to sleep, go for Leech Life, which isn't a very good attack, but I don't really see what else it can do. We need to knock it out quickly before it wakes up. Unfortunately, while we get it down to a very low amount of HP, Kingdra still prevails. So we're going to have to do this a 5th time at the very least. Finally, after 3 more losses, I get a win. This time I get really, really lucky with Pinsir, and that's huge by getting 2 Thunderwave misses. That means Pinsir is going to be able to knock out Dragonair number 2. We then get a flinch and a Thunderwave miss. So the luck is astronomical, but then we get 2 more flinches. It almost feels like I'm doing a tool-assisted speedrun at this point with the luck I'm getting. This is just simply absurd. And at this point, we know victory is in hand. We're going to do a bit of damage with Pinsir, which shouldn't even be around at this point. I actually misclick and go for Leech Life, but I put it to sleep. And once again, we're going to send out Scyther. We've gotten pretty unlucky with how quickly Kingdra has woken up before. This time, Claire has to use a full heal, but like we talked about, with the 80 base power Fury Cutter, it was simply too much damage, and Scyther is able to knock out Kingdra. So what a swing from some terrible luck to simply unbelievably good luck. Some of the best luck I think I may have ever gotten. Kind of unnecessary. I think there were other way less lucky ways to win, but it's good enough. And that's 8 gym badges down. And that's about to bring us to the Elite Four, where, like in some of my other challenges, I have a very important rule. A rule that came from these types of challenges I did as a kid because of how Pokemon Stadium 2 worked, which is what inspired these sorts of challenges. I'm not going to be saving between the Elite Four members. Unlike in some of the battles we've seen, while 1 or 2 battles we might get some incredible luck, by not saving in between, it's very unlikely that luck alone will get us through the Elite Four. The type matchups honestly aren't so bad. Psychic and Dark were super effective against, although there's barely any bug moves. And Poison and Fighting aren't terrible matchups for me. So it's about as good of an Elite Four as you can hope for type-wise. The question is, will the Kanto bugs be able to actually take advantage of these beneficial matchups? There's only one way to find out. One thing you'll notice as I battle Will is that all my Pokemon are pretty underleveled. The idea is to send out Butterfree, put Xatu to sleep, and then, and you've seen this strategy before, Fury Cutter. This is a pretty luck-based strategy since Xatu could wake up at any time, and we need Fury Cutter to hit. There's a 10% chance it misses on any given turn. Scyther is so fast it actually outspeeds Jinx, and even the second Xatu, and once we outspeed that, the battle is over. Executor is double weak and Fury Cutter is doing insane damage, and it'll one-shot Slowbro. So as long as the first Xatu stays asleep, Scyther will be able to win, and I did have to level up Scyther enough so that it outspeeds all the Pokemon. This was not my first battle versus Will. This is, however, my first battle versus Koga. I'm going to lead with Venomoth. This Ariados simply uses Double Team, tends to go for Baton Pass, which is pretty scary. Thankfully, Beedrill actually has Swift. We used it all the way back for Gym 2, and it's going to come in handy right here. It takes a long time to knock out Ariados, but eventually we do. Venomoth comes out next, and I'm just going to keep going for Swift. No real reason to keep Beedrill around. It tries to go for Supersonic a lot. Eventually it hits, and I hit myself in confusion. Then it goes for Psychic, but it doesn't knock me out. I don't knock it out. And I actually have to revenge KO with my Venomoth, which, although is underleveled, does in fact outspeed Koga's Venomoth. Now, it doesn't outspeed Crobat, and even though it just learned Psybeam, it doesn't do all that much to it. It's going to be a 4-hit KO. Crobat knocks it out with Wing Attack. Pinsir doesn't have any great moves, but it is my bulkiest Pokemon, so I'm going to try to knock it out with Headbutt. Unfortunately, I'm not doing a really good job and Pinsir faints. Now I have some Pokemon that are kind of frail. Butterfree, I go for Psybeam, but it faints. Scyther, I do have Wing Attack. It goes for Toxic. I miss because of Double Team. Wing Attack, it doesn't knock me out, and Scyther actually does pretty good damage. And I still have Quick Attack for situations just like these. It doesn't miss, and we only have Fortress left. Now, Fortress is pretty annoying because Fortress has Explosion. So what I'm going to try to do is nothing because it used Explosion right away. I was going to try to put it to sleep and then use Dig and hope I missed the Explosion, but very, very close. I'm not going to reset because there's no reason to. The experience points are useful, and eventually we will end up defeating Koga. It took 4 more losses, but I do beat Koga eventually. You'll notice something very different about this battle. And here it is. Scyther's level 42. We've also lost a lot to Will. And now that Scyther's 42, it knows Swords Dance. And with Swords Dance, we don't have to rely on Fury Cutter anymore. We can set up all the Swords Dance, and even though we don't outspeed Crobat, we will one-shot nearly every Pokemon. The only one that's kind of a question is Forretress. Now, I do need to be careful here, because eventually, Scyther will go past the level 50 cap, and I need Scyther for Red, the Kanto Gym Leaders, but for now, it is super useful, and not only is the Pokemon I used to get past Will, but also have used to get past Koga. And it's probably going to be necessary versus Bruno as well, since Bruno is the fighting type Elite Four member. He leads with Hitmontop, I lead with Butterfree. It goes for Quick Attack, I put it to sleep. Again, using Butterfree is not just simply about good matchups, but I don't want to use Scyther all the time and risk it hitting the level cap too early. I do let Butterfree get knocked out by the Onix. Venomoth does have Sunny Day and Solar Beam. I go for Sunny Day and then use Solar Beam. That'll be useful probably against Brock. That's a far way away. And then Hitmonchan takes advantage of the Sunny Day by going for Fire Punch and knocking out Venomoth. I decide to go to Pinsir. I know I'm going to have to use Scyther eventually, but I want to delay it as much as possible. I'm just going to go for Headbutt and hope I do enough damage. It does have Rock Slide. You know what? Half is good. And at this point, it makes no sense to use anything but Scyther. Wing Attack unboosted does about 80%. We knock it out, get to level 44, and I do decide to go into Beedrill. Hitmonlee doesn't have a great matchup. It goes for Swagger, and I hit with Sludge Bomb, and that is enough to knock it out. Splits the experience points up, allows Beedrill to do something. So far, it's done next to nothing, and we win. Something else I should talk about here, because again, I'm not saving between attempts, is although I have tons of potions right now, every time I lose, I not only lose half my money as per usual, but I'm using all these potions and that costs money too. So eventually we might have to swap to things like lemonade, freshwater, but hopefully not. We've made it all the way to Karen, the final Elite Four member. Beedrill has Twin Needle. I go for Focus Energy because I know it can miss, and I miss twice. I don't end up getting the crit, and by the time Umbreon knocks me out, I've done decent damage, but not as much as I'd like. Parasect also has Leech Life. I go for Rock Smash, and unfortunately, I'm really making a mess of things here. I will knock out Umbreon, but I'm going to lose like half my team, and eventually I just go to Pinsir and knock it out. Next, out comes Houndoom, and this is the scariest Pokemon. It one-shots Pinsir, and this is where Scyther is probably going to need to come into play here. Wing Attack's not enough to knock it out, and it doesn't tank Flamethrower. In the end, if we were to set up against Umbreon, we would be able to one-shot it with one Swords Dance plus Wing Attack. But for now, we lose. We've gained some useful experience points and some useful knowledge, but we're definitely going to need an alternate strategy for Karen. There's nothing more satisfying than when it takes you like 5 attempts to get past Will and Koga the first time, and then you just get past them on your first try every subsequent time. It just shows some really cool progress. Unfortunately, I make a slight mistake. I kind of forgot what I was supposed to do there, and rather than have Scyther set up Swords Dance to knock out Houndoom, I swapped in Pinsir, and Houndoom just sweeps my entire team once again. So it seems like Scyther is just going to be the only way to do this. I can't see another way. This time I suffered a couple more losses along the way, so all my Pokemon are going to be slightly higher level, and at this point I'm starting to reset because we can't let Scyther get too over-leveled. I can't overstress that. Now, I am trying to lower its defense, and I'm trying to weaken it too, because the worst thing that could happen is Umbreon waking up and lowering my Scyther's accuracy. So I'm going to try to put it back to sleep, giving Scyther the maximum amount of times to set up. Unfortunately, I can't put it back to sleep with Parasect, but we still have Butterfree. We put it to sleep, and showtime. We're going to send in Scyther. It wakes up, and it goes for Confuse Ray, of course. I do get the Swords Dance off. I opt to go for a second Swords Dance just to be safe, but not going to happen. We knock out Umbreon with just one Swords Dance. We don't hit ourselves in Confusion and knock out Houndoom, but I don't know about the rest of the team. Gengar, we snap out of Confusion in one shot. That's not super surprising. Murkrow, we use Wing Attack and knock it out. That's not super surprising. And I actually don't know why I needed more than one. I was being a little overly cautious, but it didn't cost me. You may also notice I traded in the red scale to Mr. Pokemon and have the XP share on Venomoth, partly because I like Venomoth, but also because it splits the experience points Scyther gains in half, and that's pretty good. But what might be pretty bad is Lance. We don't have a good matchup against Lance's team, who is ostensibly a flying type team. So yeah, this is going to be really annoying. Gyarados does like to go for Rain Dance first, and what I'm going to do is the exact same thing I did versus Karen. Set up 1 Swords Dance, set up 2 Swords Dance, set up 3 Swords Dance. Gyarados stays asleep, and now I can use Wing Attack, but I don't think that'll be enough to knock out Aerodactyl. Dragonite comes out next, we knock it out. I don't know which Dragonite that is. Another Dragonite comes out, don't know which Dragonite that is, but it's gone now. Next comes out Aerodactyl, and GG. GG, wow! Okay, so Swords Dance Scyther was actually too much for the Elite Four to handle. And although we're really close, it still hasn't hit level 50. We're still under-leveled. And while that was a little anticlimactic, we have beaten the entire Johto League with just bug Pokemon. Who would have thunk Koga would give me the most trouble? So funny. But yeah, Gyarados really cooperated. Oh, something you might not know. If you reset the game, you don't have to watch the credits because it saves right after you beat the Hall of Fame. So that's kind of a cool thing. But at this point, you notice me resetting because I have to plan for Kanto. I honestly thought that this entire stream would just be the Elite Four, but it took only about an hour to defeat them, which is pretty crazy considering I'm using underleveled bugs. Now, in a lot of my recent videos, I've skipped the Kanto gym leaders, but because of the unique nature of this challenge, I do want to briefly go over some of them and the strategies I've used because, and I know I've said this already a few times, it's not just about beating the gym leaders, but making sure all of my Pokemon get as close to level 50 as possible for Red without going over, meaning Scyther can't get used all that much at all. For Lieutenant Surge, Parasect makes sense anyway, but I'm actually going to lead with Beedrill simply because it's under-leveled and I'd like to get it a little bit more. Sludge Bomb is a very good same type attacking move for Beedrill, and it actually knocks out 2 Pokemon. Well, almost 2. Unfortunately, the way Poison works, Electabuzz wasn't knocked out, so that kind of sucks. But now we're just going to use Parasect. Unfortunately, we get crit right away, so we might have to use something else. Next comes out Electrode. It goes for Screech, and Dig doesn't quite one-shot it. That's pretty annoying. It then goes for Explosion, which is even more annoying. You'll notice I have Noctowl and Gyarados as HM assistants, and that I don't actually have Scyther or Pinsir, because I don't want to use them. But Butterfree and Venomoth really don't have anything for Magneton. I supremely messed up here, and I'm actually going to lose to Surge, if you can believe it. Yeah, I lost to a Kanto gym leader. You don't hear that often, but that's what happens when you only use 4 underleveled bug Pokemon, and you exclude from that your 2 best Pokemon. I actually lost to Surge 3 more times, so he's getting some pretty good revenge on me for all those times I made fun of him in Red and Blue. But in the end, I end up using Parasect first, which seems kind of weird, because don't we want Parasect for Magneton? But what I do with Parasect, or at least what I try to do, is put Electrode to sleep, and then I'm going to try to get it to self-destruct while I'm underground. Of course, that doesn't work out, and I get pretty lucky that Magneton comes out next. It hits with 1 Zap Cannon, and I tricked you, Dig is not going to knock out the Magneton. But what I did do is go get Pinsir from the box. There really wasn't any reason I couldn't use Pinsir. I was being a little bit stubborn there, trying to use all my weakest Pokemon to level them up, but there's so many trainers in Kanto. Pinsir, as we've talked about, has base 60, I think 8 or 9 power, Hidden Power Ground, which is pretty lucky. Ideally, I'd like it to have Hidden Power Rock, but that wouldn't have been quite as useful in this battle. Really, the reason I don't like having Pinsir is because I want a Pokemon to fly and a Pokemon to surf, so I need to get rid of 2 Pokemon. But with Pinsir, Surge was a joke. Against Erica, we're gonna actually use Beedrill this time, not just for show. Beedrill has Sludge Bomb and Twin Needle. Unfortunately, I didn't want to go back to the Pokemon Center, so I ran out of moves. I'm gonna delete Focus Energy for agility, because Beedrill is kind of slow. I'm gonna use Sludge Bomb here. It doesn't even do half, so I'm gonna switch to Twin Needle. The Victory Bell heals. It's gonna be a 3-hit KO with Twin Needle. It goes for Sunny Day. No Chlorophyll here, thankfully. No abilities in Gen 2. Sludge Bomb doesn't even knock out Blossom. Beedrill truly just sucks, but it's getting the job done. And then the final Pokemon is Jumpluff. We go for the Sludge Bomb. It has pretty weak defense, so it does actually one-shot something. But yeah, Beedrill sucks. I just want to level it up just in case. I doubt Beedrill will be useful going forward. It just really, I can't imagine what niche it fills. Doesn't have a unique type advantage. And I guess Sludge Bomb's okay, but it really hasn't been all that useful to this point. But hey, at least I get to use it now. Janine is the next gym leader I decide to face. I'm just going in some sort of order. And unfortunately, Butterfree gets outsped, so it's not going to be used. But Venomoth will be. I have Psybeam. I haven't taught Psychic to anything yet. I wanted to hold on just a bit. I'm going to delete Leech Life for Sleep Powder. Janine's Venomoth comes out, and I can use Sleep Powder to make sure I don't get hit. Venomoth was one of my favorite Pokemon in Gen 1 because I basically used it as Bug-type Kadabra. Kadabra being my favorite Pokemon since Psychic Pokemon were so overpowered. And Venomoth being able to use Psychic moves and having pretty good special attack was always a favorite of mine, so it's nice to get to use it in this run. It really hasn't done much in this run since it was a Venonat, but hey, that's the fun of the Kanto gyms. All the inferior Pokemon get to shine. Speaking of inferior Pokemon, Sabrina is going to send out Espeon and I'm going to use Beedrill. I go for Agility, but Psychic just knocks me out instantly. You'll see here, I decided not to mess around. I'm going to put Espeon to sleep, and I'm going to swap in Pinsir. We haven't used it a lot, so it's still fairly decently under-leveled, I guess. Level 44. Headbutt doesn't knock it out after one Swords Dance, which really worried me. But we do outspeed and knock out Mr. Mime. Unsurprisingly, Alakazam outspeeds, and it goes for Reflect, which sucks, unless I get a critical hit, in which case the Reflect did nothing and just wasted a turn, so hooray! We win. This was the first battle in Kanto. I had Scyther in my party, because I knew Sabrina wasn't going to mess around, but in the end, like usually in Kanto, it was a first try victory. Against Misty, the Pokemon we really haven't seen much of lately is Butterfree, other than putting things to sleep, and Butterfree does have a very cool use in Misty. We have Giga Drain, so that is our best grass move other than Solar Beam, which requires Sunny Day to be useful. And we're going to do a cool thing where we put things to sleep and use Giga Drain. Lapras, well, I went for Sleep Powder here just to kind of be a little cheeky, thinking it would wake up, and I thought that would look cool, but I ended up knocking out with Psybeam as it stays asleep for eternity. Giga Drain does one-shot Quagsire, and you'll notice my Butterfree is fairly high leveled. The reason for this is the more useless a Pokemon is, the more I like to use it versus random trainers, because I'm not too worried about not having it available versus gym leaders. And so Butterfree is seeing a lot of action versus the random gym leaders. Beedrill actually just hasn't seen action at all, which is kind of funny because it's the most useless. But in the end, Pinsir is actually in the slow level up group, which is why it's a little lower level than it otherwise would be, and it mops up versus Starmie. 3 gyms to go. The next 3 gym leaders all could be problematic, except for the fact that I had such a good strategy against Brock. Graveler misses with Rollout, which is nice, but we're just going to Sunny Day Solar Beam because every single one of Brock's Pokemon is double weak to Grass. So Venomoth is legitimately quite good here. I was planning for this for like, I don't know how long was I planning for this, but it's the best way to get rid of rock Pokemon. Unfortunately against Kabutops, I have to wait a turn for Solar Beam to charge because Sunny Day runs out. But Brock went from a gym leader that I legitimately didn't know how to beat to one that a Pokemon I really like was able to use. Somewhat of a unique strategy, although Butterfree technically could have done that too. And I did have Giga Drain just in case, but a win's a win's a win. Anyway, Blaine, Fire type. That's going to be pretty hard, right? Not really. I actually didn't mean to lead with Venomoth, but now that it's leading, I can put Magcargo to sleep. I can use Swords Dance and then just use Hidden Power Ground, which should sweep through the rest of this team. We even outspeed Magmar. We're probably not going to outspeed Rapidash. Oh, we do. Neato. Okay, so those are the 7 easiest gym leaders. Blue has a pretty varied team, and we're still underleveled relative to his Pokemon, so this could be challenging. For only the second time in Kanto, I'm going to use every one of my Pokemon. Scyther wasn't needed, so it's still level 48, meaning I can even level it up a little bit more before Red, which is pretty cool. And hopefully I won't have to level up to beat Blue, but I might need to. Blue is pretty tough. So Blue leads with Pidgeot, which is good against a bug team. This time I meant to lead with Venomoth, I outspeed and put to sleep, and now out comes Scyther. We've used this strategy before, set up Swords Dance, try to knock things out, and Scyther doesn't have a move I actually probably should have given it, but for now it knocks out Pidgeot. Unfortunately, it's at this point there's a move I could have used that I didn't. Honestly, just forgot to teach it to Scyther, so Rhydon is going to knock it out. I go to Butterfree and use Giga Drain, but where this really hurts me is Arcanine. Arcanine is plenty fast, and it knows Flamethrower, and even though it's not the best special attacker, it's a good enough special attacker to one-shot all my Pokemon, and it's at this point I reset because I realized I've forgotten a couple things that could make this battle a heck of a lot more consistent. Unfortunately, the only consistency I ended up finding was consistently bad luck. I can't put it to sleep here, I can't put it to sleep here, so I have to reset. That's one reset. The next battle, I put it to sleep, alright, that's turn 1 asleep. Now I switch to Scyther, turn 2 asleep, pretty good. Swords Dance, turn 3 asleep. Turn 4 goes for Mirror Move, and then it uses Wing Attack. A little greedy, but I needed to set up 3 in order for the strategy to work. The next attempt, I put it to sleep. It's asleep 1 turn, 2 turns. Swords Dance, 3 turns. Swords Dance, 4 turns. Swords Dance, it stays asleep. So finally, things are looking okay. I go for Wing Attack, knock it out. Now the move I was referring to was Steel Wing. It has a 10% chance of missing, but it would have one-shot Rhydon, and you can see my reaction right there. That is the reaction of someone who just is fed up with the game not giving him the luck he feels he deserves. Now, there is only about a 40% chance that the Pidgeot stays asleep the entire time. Of course, in this next battle, it wakes up instantly, which ruins the buffer area I have because Scyther does get to tank 1 Wing Attack before it faints. So I don't even need it to stay asleep the entire time, I just can't have it using 2 Wing Attacks. So what is this battle, like 7 or something? And all I want this Pidgeot to do is snooze. Just take it easy, relax Pidgeot. Doesn't happen here, I get the Mirror Move, Swords Dance, and then Wing Attack, and so just have to battle again. This is so incredibly frustrating. And of course the next battle, I miss with Sleep Powder and it Mirror Moves and hits with Sleep Powder because I can't imagine a funnier outcome. So battle 10 or whatever, it falls asleep. I swap in Scyther, you know the drill. Now we just need 3 Swords Dance to knock out Rhydon. 1, 2, oh my god, this is gonna happen. 3, and it actually stayed asleep. Now we need the 90% chance of Steel Wing actually hitting. Hooray! That's probably the battle because we almost definitely outspeed Arcanine, and since we do, I know this battle is over. However, as great as the strategy has been versus Lance and now versus Blue, I'm not exactly sure if this strategy will work versus Red, mostly because of Espeon and potentially Charizard. Even with all my stat experience, a level 50 Scyther is not going to outspeed those level 70 Pokemon. So we're not going to simply be able to set up Swords Dance and Sweep. I'm not even sure what we are going to be able to do or if the battle is possible. I may have to give up some of these challenges. I kind of want to try this with every single type, or at least every type of which there are 6 Pokemon. But for now, the only thing we can do is make attempts and see what happens, and that's exactly what I plan on doing. Alright, Red leads with Pikachu, which is level 81, his highest level Pokemon. I'm going to try to put it to sleep, and I do. Now I'm going to try and send in Pinsir, and oh well, it uses a full heal there. That's not going to work, so let's put it back to sleep. Okay. Now I'm going to send in Pinsir. Or, yeah... okay, Pinsir. Let's do it. Oh, it heals again. Alright, so now I'll send back in Parasect. And now I'll send in Pinsir. I'm just going to use 1 Swords Dance. I don't want to be greedy, and I just kind of want to know what happens with 1 Swords Dance. Okay. Venusaur comes out next. I go for Hidden Power accidentally. I meant to go for Headbutt. And another Swords Dance would have been preferable here. I'm going to swap in Venomoth because Solar Beam is going to be double resisted by it. In this game, you can put Grass Pokemon to sleep, and Psybeam is super effective, albeit very ineffectual. So I send in Scyther, but he immediately switches to Espeon, which outspeeds and one-shot Scyther. And that's exactly why, and look at that facial expression. I did think Espeon would outspeed, but I didn't know it would one-shot, and that makes this really scary. Because even if I had a max-powered Wing Attack or Fury Cutter, I wouldn't be able to use it. Espeon just knocks me out instantly. And at this point, I really didn't know how I could even do this. How could this group of 6 Pokemon, with all weaknesses to Charizard, which we haven't even faced yet, and are outspeed and one-shot by Espeon, probably all of them are, how is that even going to work? Well, my first idea of a new strategy now that I've battled Red one time is to do the exact same thing as the first time, but set up a few more Swords Dances. And after setting up all three, I then go for Headbutt, knock out Pikachu, and see how much I'm going to do to Venusaur. I probably won't be able to one-shot it. In fact, I just do barely over half. I knock out Venusaur, but what's going to come out next is the Charizard, and this is the worst Pokemon. Obviously not going to outspeed it. Now the question is, will Scyther outspeed it? And the answer is no. So if Scyther can't outspeed it, and we know Flamethrower is going to one-shot everything, how is this even going to be possible? I keep trying to battle Red, trying to gain more and more information. Hopefully, some of these battles, one of them, I'll learn something that gives me some sort of insight into how I could potentially beat this seemingly impossible trainer. Now, in this attempt, Pinsir is hit by Thunder and is knocked out by Venusaur, and so Venomoth is going to come out next. And this kind of matters because instead of now Charizard coming out, for whatever reason, Snorlax comes out. And if you thought Snorlax would be any easier, you would be mistaken. Snorlax is incredibly bulky, and its Body Slam nearly one-shots all of my Pokemon. So, to recap, we have Espeon, which outspeeds and one-shots all my Pokemon, Charizard, which outspeeds and one-shots all my Pokemon, and Snorlax, which is tanky as heck and almost one-shots all my Pokemon. At this point, I really did consider giving up because this isn't like some of my battles where I see a pathway, but it's really difficult, it requires a lot of luck. I really couldn't even fathom at this point what I could even possibly do to get a victory here. In one of my battles, a kind of fluky thing happened where Red swapped into Espeon as I was trying to put Venusaur to sleep. See the eyes? The eyes are like, opportunity, opportunity. Now, Beedrill doesn't have Swords Dance, but it does have Agility, and I can use Twin Needle. It doesn't do all that much. And unfortunately, Espeon wakes up and knocks me out. And although this battle on the surface might seem like another unimportant loss, it was anything but. Because it was this battle, and this is what I'm talking about. You battle again and again, and eventually the winning strategy presents itself. And by just switching to Beedrill and using Agility and outspeeding Espeon, I came up with a plan that I knew would eventually work. First things first though, we're going to have to level up Beedrill. Now you might wonder, why the heck are you leveling up Beedrill versus level 2 Pokemon? And the answer is stat experience. I don't want to get into the nitty gritty of how it works, but basically the base stats of every Pokemon you KO are added to Beedrill stats, and this is unique to Gen 1 and 2. But because of that, it makes sense to knock out a bunch of lower level Pokemon. Base stats are consistent across the entire species of Pokemon. It doesn't depend on level. And for that reason, Beedrill is gaining a lot more stat experience by knocking out 100, 200 of these Pokemon per level up, as opposed to maybe 30 or 40 properly leveled wild Pokemon. But hold on a second, J-Rose, I don't understand. You used Agility and got bodied by Espeon, and got lucky that you were even able to put it to sleep, and suddenly you're convinced you can win. That's right. And if you don't believe me, watch one of the proudest moments of my Pokemon career. The start of the battle is going to be the same thing you've seen before. Parasect trying to put Pikachu to sleep, and Pinsir swapping in. The big reason for this is I need Venusaur to come out here. After weakening Venusaur, we're then going to swap in Butterfree and put the Venusaur to sleep. Once we put the Venusaur to sleep, we're going to use the move Flash. Now, the only reason I even have Flash is because I wanted to light up the cave, which is annoying to walk in if you don't have Flash. But it's going to weaken Venusaur's accuracy. Note that I've never banned accuracy dropping moves like Flash, only evasion raising moves for the reason you're about to see coming up. Now that Venusaur has terrible accuracy and is asleep, Beedrill comes into play. Unfortunately, in Generation 2, Beedrill can't learn Swords Dance, but it can learn Curse. And by setting up 6 Curses and a bunch of Agilities, Beedrill will gain Attack and Defense, and you can see Solar Beam still does significant damage, which is why we have leftovers, and the goal is to have Venusaur weakened so it uses Synthesis, and just using as many agilities and curses as possible so that we 100% outspeed and one-shot everything. Unfortunately, easier said than done. Venusaur tanks Sludge Bomb, but doesn't hit me. So for now, the strategy is working as planned. But the other element of Curse versus Swords Dance is that had Snorlax attacked me, so long as it didn't paralyze me with Body Slam and it went for Amnesia, which is pretty good, it does typically do that on turn 1, it shouldn't have done very much damage to me. Next comes out Charizard. This is the one we do need to one-shot, and we do, and you can see my reaction because I know now we have just won. We knock out Espeon, Blastoise we might not. I go for Sludge Bomb, and I'll admit I get a little bit lucky that we poison it, but all that really did, in my opinion, was allow Beedrill, the MVP of this red battle, to get the win itself. We had plenty of other Pokemon to use. We would have knocked out Blastoise anyway. Who would have thunk Curse Agility Beedrill would be Red's demise? And with that, we have defeated Pokemon Crystal with bug Pokemon only from the Kanto region, not exceeding level 50. This run was a ton of fun and is something I've wanted to do for a really long time. But wait, it gets even better. Because there are exactly 12 bug Pokemon lines in Generation 2, if you guys like this video, we can do this again with the Johto region bugs, like Heracross, Shuckle, Forretress. I'm going to tell you, I actually think it's going to be even harder with those bug Pokemon. So if you want to see that video, comment, like, subscribe. It lets me know that you guys really enjoy the content. But until then, thank you guys so much for watching. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you all in the next video. Take care.